Ben is a laid-back guy with a dog named Snickers, an efficient bounty hunter, and more nights than most aliens in the entire league combined. He is nervous and excited about the development of PRD. He eats a lot more than the average person, and he has a bigger system than the typical hydroponic and meat-growing systems on a one-man boat. He tried to reduce the loss mostly. He looks like a microcosm for innocence, but a fairy tale villain. His whole trick is to carefully cut them into pieces. His victims then sewed them together inside out and hung them in public places. He's talented at building traps and engaging in personal combat. He's only been active for a week, and the station authorities have decided it would be cheaper, easier, and safer to put a bounty on Butcher Ben. Pre-deformation speed. Still the main 298C. After all, FDL engines multiply speed, not increase it. His ship is quite small, so it could land on a space station pylon instead of docking. On the outside, he runs at 100 seconds per second, which is best practice to maintain at least some level of alertness when exiting the warp. He observed the path of a relatively close ship and predicted that a collision between the two ships would occur within the next 49.87 seconds. He tapped into the station's traffic control and stole top-level administrative data for every station system. Check out 6 in detail and make fine temporary changes. Just announce your existence in the room. He reduced the clock speed, looked at the room, and actually stayed for a moment. A little further than they were meant to go. It wasn't long before Ben pulled out his bracket, reset his watch, and sped up his standard 2-column lens, one with magnification and, more importantly, careful with gravity. Manipulations allow him to override the degree of slowness at will. Instead of extending the landing tracks, he had them flush with the rest of the bottom of the ship. If he tried to apply the local gravity weight of the ship to a space station that only has a landing strip area, he would do quite a bit of damage. Instead, he simply placed the entire bottom of the boat on the floor. He disembarked with his white scout armor magnetically attached to his back, a pistol attached to his hip, and a rather large knife attached to another. He had no opportunity or excuse to use his heaviest equipment for some time, largely because the Union built everything so damn negligent, and barely armor would protect him from otherwise deadly high-energy radiation, gas attacks, and what the Union considered anti-shuttlecraft weapons, and further improve his strength and speed. His dog stayed in his boat. Instead, he's followed by 4 highly modular drones and has the standard cerebellum enhancements that allow him to control the drones just like his forearms. In this case, the drones were equipped for the 8G moderately dense atmosphere, the environment of a Union station. They each had 4 propellers, a variable power machine gun, magnetic acceleration with an advanced, cycling, hydron, pneumatic, recoil system, an electrolaser that used a laser to ionize, a gas channel before sending an electric shock down, channel said, and a container with a foam sleeve and 2 liquids. In 2 separate compartments that, when mixed, would quickly solidify, and a fairly tough solid with a volume quite a bit higher than the 2 liquids combined could be used to hold someone in a mostly harmless way and, albeit slowly, later removed via hammer and chisel. The concept had been a thing way back in the 20th century and had improved a bit since then. Of course, it can also be used to repair the hole in the hull, but this mixture is particularly optimized for a limited staff. It's named. Jorth lifted the trapping fortress from the station and formed the circumference between time and position. They managed to turn their heads, and they still adapted to the distance between everything in the United Space. For that matter, the fortress is in one of the interior areas of the space station, so it can't just be pushed out, at least not without a lot of moving objects. After some extra thought, 2 more drones flew out of his ship. Each of these drones is equipped with 4 arms instead of weapons, and one of them follows him while the other goes to collect the food order. The car smells pretty good about 28 meters away, haha. He thinks about aliens, fish, and chips. Not bothering to check for poison inside, he flipped off his helmet and jumped inside as if someone had managed to poison him, and he was going to nominate them for the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in between the night and the genetic changes. There was basically nothing that humans couldn't eat. He started sprinting, although it's not really a sprint. If it's as sustainable as walking now, it's against the Fortress GE Korth. Having already looked at the station's security cameras for possible ambushes, there might be waiting for him or other such annoying things. There was a small crowd blocking his path, but luckily the walls of an immediately nearby structure were just barely sturdy enough. He can run under their circumstances without permanent deformation, so he will bypass the amount vertically. He heard someone say that people were crazy. He noticed that the cleaning drone was not working and sent the drone to be checked. He took a quick look at the schematic and ordered his ship to build spare parts. If used at the right time or similar, there's always the possibility that its meta could involve changing the architecture to create nukes. But it is provided by a reliable and well-known uploader and has been on the site for almost 3 years. The chances of anyone noticing this before then, if anything is worth noting, are pretty much zero. The builder's boat was only 20 meters wide. It wasn't exactly a big ship, but it was still a ship. Guns and nits could produce more or less anything as long as the raw materials were available, even raw or fused together, blown-up sets of ships, even if they had to build the machinery to make the final product. Once the parts were ready, he mounted another drone on board to fix the cleaning drone and put the problem behind him. After a while, this wasn't a very big station after all. When he arrived at the outskirts of the station guard tried to stop him for a good 2 seconds before he hit him with a stick. Their tablets included his bounty hunting license, personal weapons license, spaceship license, weapons license, limited solicitation license, and more. He set the clock speed to 10 Fat 1. 2.6 Fat 1 is more or less a safe limit for constant use, but 10 Fat 1 is fine. As long as he didn't take more than 15 minutes at a time, he stepped over the perimeter and was immediately attacked by 3 missile launchers, cursing in his mind. Is this how you treat your guests? He walked about 5 meters and then placed the shaped charges. Does he want people to actually walk the halls? He seriously sat up? He has a heartbeat. It's pretty obvious where he is in this place. Why the hell didn't station security handle this clown? However, he retreated 10 meters and the charge detonated, creating a rather large hole. Are you crazy? He's probably making a sound system. If I say that's some kind of pot calling the kettle black in it. Who do you think uses such high explosives so close that Java's voice has a nervous, shaky undertone? I took it. You don't meet many people. A few explosives later, he was close enough for his armor to detect the JVA's fear pheromones. You know, when you're scared, you smell like mint, and I'm not a big fan of mint ice cream. I prefer the Dutch chocolate aroma. What is your favorite ice cream? I have a hostage. No. You're in that place for more than a single heartbeat to decide you can be held hostage by another human being with a constantly pumping heart and lungs that don't echo anyone in the room but your own voice. What you need is a speaker. You know that everything they do shows that their voice has not bounced here in any other room. The armor is quite thin, but it has good sensors built into it. Yossi was silent for a moment as Ben made another accusation. After 2 more blows, he attacked him. You won't catch me alive this time. The speakers are turned off, and you come back alive, just a little more than dead. If you want to die now, well, I'll just bring your head back or whatever. I was thinking for a while. You know you're a lot calmer than the last one I dealt with a wet squeal that echoed throughout the compound. Ben stepped over the threshold, and his drone found weapons next to him. The room was dark, except for the faint glow of the emergency lights that cast eerie shadows on the walls. Jorth stood in the center with a twisted grin on his face, holding a long-toothed blade. The room smelled of antiseptics and fear. Last chance, Joe. Give yourself up, and I'll see to it that you're turned over to the authorities. During one number, Ben did his voice, and Joss laughed in a deep, dark, high, almost maniacal voice. Do you really think you can knock me down? I defeated Josh, who was worse than you. He lunged forward, pointing his sword at Ben's chest. He quickly slapped Jovi's side. Have the alien crash into a table full of surgical instruments. Yes, everyone laughed at his drone, hovering with creepy Jorvi, climbing up. He pressed a button on his wrist, and the room was suddenly full of deafening warnings. The walls began to move, panels sliding the head to reveal hidden rooms filled with deadly traps. Ben's drones immediately sprung into action, firing traps and disarming them before they could activate. Ben advanced himself to blur his movements. He delivered a series of punches and kicks, each blow landing with precision. Jorth tried to fight back, but it was clear he was no match for the enhanced human. Ben's drones provided cover for their weapons, keeping any remaining traps at bay within minutes. Xiaoxi was lying on the ground. His blade was knocked down, his body was beaten black and blue, and you are done. He handcuffs Jose with a set of alien restraints, then drags Jose away from the fortress station's security staff. When they finally arrived, they drew their weapons. They looked at Ben with a mixture of awe and fear. Take him to BRG. Ben was ordered to deliver the Jorvi and try to deal with his problems next time. The security guard nodded, too stunned to report the situation to Snickers, who was sitting on the couch on Ben Davy. He reviews the success of the mission and analyzes every detail to improve the strategy for the next prize. He knew there would always be someone else. He feeds Snickers to the tail-wagging dog. Fortunately, the ship's AI called to inform the guild that a new bounty had been placed on the network. He looked at the details and noticed that the location of the target looked like we were moving towards the outer edge. He said this to Snickers, and the dog barked in response, getting ready for Ben's next adventure, the course of the ship and the hum of the engine. He sat back in his chair and thought about his meeting with Xiaoxi. It was just another job, another day in the life of a bounty hunter, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was on the horizon, something that would test his skills and determination like never before. As the ship moved in, Ben closed his eyes and allowed himself to rest for a moment. He knew he would need it for what was to come. A few days after Ben woke up to the sound of the ship's alarm, he jumped out of his chair and took a quick assessment. Situation: the ship's AI informed him of an unauthorized access attempt to the Union's central database. Ben's eyes narrowed. This is no ordinary bounty. He connected to the Union network and bypassed security protocols with ease, and the data he discovered sent shivers down his spine. With advanced technology and a reckless agenda, a new fraction is increasing. Their goals are the most important number in the league. He sends a distress signal to the other bounty hunters, summoning them to carry out the mission ahead. He needs all the help. As the ship speeds toward its destination, he can neutralize this new threat, and Ben prepares for the coming battle. He upgraded his drones to make sure they were combat-ready, and he trained rigorously, pushing his body and mind to their limits. A final confrontation is inevitable, and Ben is determined to win. He will do whatever it takes to protect the Federation and its citizens, even if it means risking his life when Earth sneaks up, knowing it will be his toughest mission yet, but he is ready. He would face the new threat head-on, with Snickers by his side and his drones at his back. This was just the beginning of a new chapter in his life. One was filled with danger and uncertainty, but Ben was a survivor, a soldier, and he didn't back down from the ship, and Ben got off, ready to meet. No matter what challenges lay ahead, he would protect the Union at all costs because he was a bounty hunter, and that was his calling.